Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here tonight. We're excited to be able to share this important information with you about the upcoming transition for sixth graders to middle school. And your engagement means a lot to us. So before we start answering the questions, I would like to turn it over to Dr. Huff to say a few words.
Thank you, Mrs. Wagler. Good evening, everyone. Oh, you sound so excited to be here tonight. I promise it will be a good time. This is a great time in Elkhart Community Schools because, to be honest, we're doing something that has not been done before here. Making this transition is going to require clear transparency from our district office, parent feedback, student feedback is important, and feedback from our teachers. So I'm excited to make sure that our kids have outstanding experiences here in Elkhart Community Schools. One of the things that really attracted me to the school district was I knew I was coming in at a time where there was going to be some changes that were not only necessary, but it was with people who were ready to make sure that those changes occurred. Most of the presentation tonight will be based off the 2022 feasibility study. And I think there's some important information that you need to know before we get into the heart of your questions, and I promise we'll get into all your questions. A huge part of that feasibility study was in concert with our board members and community members, spent countless hours trying to think about what are some of the best ways to make sure that we were utilizing our facilities in the most prudent manners, but also making sure that our kids had access to, again, as I said, outstanding programming. But also one of the big challenges that we face currently in Elkhart Community Schools is that our enrollment is declining. There's no way to massage that information, correct? So when I look at the enrollment today, and Mrs. Brander, she's not here, last night I told the community there were 10,580 kids who were here with us on October 1st. That's the count day that is official, that we use for our official numbers for the beginning of the year. That's where they projected we would be in 2026. So our enrollment numbers are quite going a little bit flatter than, decelerating much faster than what we would like. So as a person who's responsible, making sure I manage the tax funds pretty transparently, but also making sure we're being a good steward of funds, I think it's time to make sure how this transition works for kids to improve educational outcomes, because that's what we're here for, to improve outcomes, but also to make sure we're being a good financial steward to the school district. And tonight you will hear how the school district plans to do both. So I want to emphasize these are not ideas that just come from my head. These are ideas that I recommend based off the long work that was done by that feasibility committee back in 2022. But the key difference is in 2022, they didn't talk a lot about programming. Tonight, I'm excited to share with you about lots of programming opportunities for our sixth graders when they do make this transition for next year. So with that being said, I'm going to turn it back over to Mrs. Wagler. She's going to talk about the various categories that you asked on your questions, and then members of my team tonight will make sure that we answer those questions thoroughly for you. So I look forward to that opportunity this evening, and most importantly, I'm glad I'm able to do it with the people here. You care about your kids, you care about our school system, and we want it to be the best and safest place for our students. And I believe we can do that if we all do those things together. So, Mrs. Wagler, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you. All right, before we get started, I just wanted to extend a thank you for those who have filled out their questions in advance from the QR code or from our website. If you didn't get a chance to submit your questions ahead of time, don't worry, there's plenty of opportunity and we still want to hear from you. So you can either scan this QR code, which will take you to our website, or at the table with the black tablecloth, there are paper forms that you can fill out tonight and write your questions down. We're going to collect those throughout the night, and then we are going to take all of the questions from the 3 forums that we have and compile them into an FAQ. That FAQ will be on our website, and it will be updated as we gain more questions throughout this entire transition process. So check often for updates on that. All right, now let's dive into the discussion. Dr. Huff already hit on this a bit. The decision to transition our sixth graders has been a very thoughtful process that didn't happen overnight. It's accumulation of many years of planning, and it was a significant part of the feasibility study conducted in 2022, which looked at various factors, including educational benefits, community needs, and resources. And the study played a key role on our approach to make sure that we are making the best decision for our students. So I don't know, do you have anything else that you wanted to add to this, or did you cover that and we move to the next slide?
No, I do want to, let me use my deeper voice. I do want to make sure that I add a few things to that. I tried to give a comprehensive look of the feasibility study, but one of the things that came out of that feasibility study that was almost universally agreed at that time in 2022, which seems like a very long time ago, was this move that we're making right now. Part of the hiring process from the board, and one of the things that was charged was to get up to that point to make those recommendations, and out of the final recommendations were, this is one of them, transitioning from a K through 6 elementary model to a K through 5 elementary model, and to a more of a middle school, traditional middle school model, which is 6, 7, 8, opposed to a junior high model, which is 7 and 8. Part of that, they wanted to make sure the new superintendent had enough time to review the feasibility study, and then had, which would be my input on the recommendations. I agree with that recommendation, so I wanted to make sure that you know that this has been in the conversation for not just 2 years. I asked the room last night, how long have they been talking about transitioning kids out of the elementary school into the middle school? And raise your hand if you've been having this discussion for a while. So this is not new information, but it is new information how we articulate things. I will tell you up front, you will hear from me quite often as we go through this process. You must communicate with your community fairly often, and when I say community, that's teacher, staff, and students, because it's happening to students as well. And so this feasibility study really was the groundwork for this, but I think how we do this will help us with the other decisions that we are definitely going to have to make at a different time. So I just want to give you some context on how we use this feasibility study to get to where we are tonight. So that's all I want to add.
All right, thank you. All right, so we've highlighted a little bit of the past. Now that brings us to the present, the transition of the sixth graders into middle school. And it's essential for families to know what to expect as they move forward in this process. So I want to talk about the timeline for this transition. So you can see on the screen that we've outlined key milestones about what families can anticipate in the upcoming months, from building upgrades to student visits at our middle schools. And I'm excited to say that we are right on track and right on schedule on the timeline. So we had a couple of logistical questions in regards to the timeline, so I'm going to start with Mr. Giannisi. The first question that came in from parents, will middle schools be large enough to house sixth grade students?
My name is Tony Giannisi.
Oh, it's not coming. The light's not on. Logistical.
Thank you. Sorry. My name is Tony Giannisi. I am our Chief Operating Officer. Our middle schools are definitely big enough to accommodate 3 grade levels. Many years ago, we actually housed 7th, 8th, and 9th graders in the middle schools. So we had between 900 and 1,000 students in each middle school. We are projecting a move of approximately 250 students, give or take a few, to each building. And so that would put the enrollment numbers between 700 and 800 at each school. One of the other questions I'll go ahead and answer was about lockers. We have at least 829 lockers in each building, which we will replace as part of the work that we're going to do in the schools to update them.
All right, thank you. Speaking of updating, will there be other renovations done to the middle school buildings?
Absolutely. We actually are underway with work right now. We are working on new digital signage for Northside and Pierre Moran, new public address or PA systems, public address systems for Northside and Westside. We're updating the door card access readers in every building, looking at additional security cameras, all of that which we have plans to have done by the end of this calendar year. Then we are also in the planning stages for carpeting, painting, lighting, ceiling work, restroom renovations. All restrooms will be updated to be ADA compliant in all three of the middle schools. And then there's some additional work we're going to look at outside. There's going to be some, for lack of a better term, sprucing up of the main entrances. And there'll be some other miscellaneous work, like I said, lockers, that we'll be doing in each of the buildings.
All right, thank you. All right, Dr. Huff, I see that there's some other things on this timeline that are not building related, but that are student related. Can you speak to those, please?
Yes. Well, you want to share me the exact question, and I'll make sure? Or you just, oh, you're talking about the timeline?
Yes,
Oh,
the timeline, yes.
student-related things that are on the timeline, and also parent-related on the timeline. She threw me a curveball. We didn't talk about that yesterday. We'll get her afterwards. But anyway, one of the things that students will have multiple opportunities to visit the buildings. Starting in November or December, we're in the process of scheduling them to do their middle school visits. That's a normal thing for sixth graders, right? Our fifth graders will have to do that this year, as they'll be making that transition. So you'll be getting some information here pretty shortly before fall break, letting you know when those kiddos will be going to visit their middle schools, their prospective middle schools. I think that's important for them to see early what that's like. But it will be a two-way street. Their principals will also get to visit their schools. So the middle school, North Side, West Side, and Pierre Moran principals will go visit all the feeder schools that they go to get to know the kids there as well. Our middle schools will have to be reimagined a lot. They're going to get two cohorts of kids who don't know how to do middle school. And so a little later on, you'll hear talk us about some of the benefits of that. I think it's important that we do this now, and then they're invited into those family nights that they have at the middle schools when it's those times, so you can get a feel of how our middle school principals are going to care for not just our sixth graders, our kids who are coming in who will be seventh graders, and also our kids who are going to be sixth graders. So please be on the lookout. Those will occur in November and December. And then later on in the year, parents, after we want you to come in as well, so you can inspect the work that we said we were going to do tonight. I want you to be able to notice, and I will be sharing with you via email and some of our posts, all the upkeep on what we're doing to make sure that these these markers that Mr. Giannessi spoke to are occurring. So you'll see pictures and things of such of the transition of going from the building looking like this, but to making sure that you can see a firm delineation in the sixth grade area, and we'll talk a little bit later, in the seventh grade area and the eighth grade area, so you can see the actual progress along the way. For me, I need to see things happening and know that they are happening. And I think it's important that our parents see those as well, and our teachers and our students also. So on this timeline, I feel very comfortable to say that we're going to get there. Is it going to be tight? Absolutely. But as long as we stay consistent and have constant updates, and we're meeting in committees on a weekly basis to make sure that the work gets done. But again, most importantly, if we're not communicating it to the families, you don't know. So you will see pictures, and you'll also get bi-weekly updates from me regarding our middle school transition process. So, but I'm excited for the kids to come over to see what their middle school life will be like.
Another question that many of the families have asked is, what are the educational benefits of moving sixth graders to middle school? Research shows that this transition can provide students with greater opportunities for academic growth, access to specialized teachers, and broader curriculum. So this time I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rausch. Dr. Rausch, what are some of the research-based benefits of sixth graders being housed in middle schools?
Thank you. Dr. Rausch, I'm the new Assistant Superintendent of Instruction here in Elkhart Community Schools. I'm also a former middle school principal that had 6th, 7th, and 8th graders in my middle school. So very familiar with having 6th, 7th, and 8th graders all together. Some of the educational benefits, as you can see up here on the screen, it's definitely a smoother transition into middle school. We are, as your child progresses, we do want to prepare them for the next level. We do want to prepare them from middle school to high school. There's definitely a good staff connection with that transition. We will be keeping them, kind of the 6th grade in kind of a wing of the building, 7th grade and 8th grade. There are elective courses, however, that they will have to integrate with one another, and it's okay. You'll be surprised at how the 8th graders tend to mentor the 6th graders, and the 6th graders do look up to those 7th and 8th graders. Definitely increased leadership opportunities for 8th grade, as I just stated. Access to clubs, there's definitely going to be more activities for them to join after school. And then the summer programs, STEM is definitely is a focus. They have STEM labs in the middle schools. And then, again, the mentoring opportunities will be there as well.
All right. Dr. Huff, do you want to add some?
Thank you, Ms. Wagner. I definitely want to talk about the mentoring and the summer programs for middle schools. The reason why I want to talk about those things is the summer programming hasn't really occurred for our middle schoolers. This year, we're already starting to talk about what does that look like next year. I really think for me, not for me, for our students, that's where we see the biggest gap in learning opportunity. Where we're missing is that we're not engaging our kids a lot in the summer. That will change this year. That will be a big change for our school system, but also for our kids. They want to be engaged. They want to come to have learning opportunities where, one, we want to increase the academic rigor. Of course, we want those things to occur, but also there should be some fun things that they are learning at school as well during that summertime. So I want to let you know, as parents, you'll start to probably hear more about summer learning opportunities pretty early. You're like, why are you talking about summer? We're only in February. Because we want to make sure that we are identifying kids pretty early for these learning opportunities and to make sure that they have all the information that they need to make sure that, one, that they're there, but two, that you can kind of investigate and see all the exciting things that we are planning for our middle schoolers. So that's what I would like to highlight. That'll be different. And also, we have some of the best transitional teams. When I say transitional teams, counselors and social workers and support staff in our middle schools. That has been identified by the IDOE at 2 of our locations. Elkhart is very prepared to make sure that we meet the effective needs of our kids. Those needs to make sure that they enter in not only feeling like they're ready, but actually we're putting in procedures and practices to make sure that they are confident and that they learn all the things that they should. So these are some of the educational benefits, and then when we talk about the programming, we'll get a little bit more. But I wanted to definitely talk about summer programming and mentoring because I think it's necessary for these kids as we make this huge leap this year. Thank you, Ms. Wagner.
And Dr. Huff, you hit on this a little bit when you were talking about the counselors, so I don't know if I should direct this next question to you or Dr. Roush, but one of the questions that a parent had submitted was, what are the differences in mentality and behavior between preteens and teens as we're looking for this transition?
I would have to say that there's really I think that the biggest difference would be is that they're used to being kept in a classroom, whereas now when you enter into a middle school, you are interacting period by period. You're changing classes. There's just a lot more action going on in a middle school. But again, like I said, it's okay. Again, I'm speaking from experience from being a middle school principal. I really didn't have any issues with 8th graders being around 6th graders or the 7th graders being around the 6th graders. Is there a difference? Sure there is. I mean, obviously you're in that stage where you're going through some changes, and 6th grade is maybe coming into those changes, physically. But again, it really is going to be okay.
All right, thank you. Well, now that we've talked about some of the research-based educational benefits, let's move on to programming. Middle school offers a unique chance for students to explore various subjects and extracurricular activities that may not be available in the elementary schools. So parents have submitted a few questions in this category. I think I have 5 or 6. So Dr. Roush, I'm going to start the first one with you. How will lunch periods be affected since there will be an increase in students?
Yes, we are hoping, and again, we can't speak to this directly until we do the scheduling, but we are hoping that, 6th graders will have lunch separately from 7th and 8th graders. And then what was the rest of that question?
Yeah.
Oh, just the lunch,
how
okay.
the lunch affects with the increase of students.
Yes, yeah.
So-
So it'll be fine. The
Those are
lunchrooms have the capacity.
Those
so-
are considerations that
Yes,
are
yep.
part of the strategic planning process.
Yes, yes.
All right, and will there be recess for 6th graders was another question submitted.
Barb, do you want to?
Where's Barb?
Yeah. I'll let the,
You have to flip the
Director of Elementary
the
Schools.
sideways. Today is the sideways. Yep.
Hi, everyone. I hate to say it, but no, there will be no unstructured recess in 6th grade. I can tell you that as a parent of 3 kids who went through Elkhart Community Schools and as a principal, it is time when kids are in 6th grade to start reducing the amount of unstructured playtime they have. And I know that this is an anxiety-causing transition for all of you, for the kids. Everybody's a little nervous, you're excited, you're nervous. But once those kids get into the school and they start fresh with new routines and new people, they get excited and they start learning the routines and they can overcome those challenges and all those fears they had when they walked in. And the other thing is we really need to start preparing them for the rigorous and challenging curriculum that they're going to be facing as they grow up through the school years. So we start reducing that amount of unstructured time. But that does not mean that we don't want them to socialize, and it does not mean that we don't want them to have physical activity either. So that socialization will be done through lunch periods, because one of the biggest fears for kids is, will I see my friends? Will I make more friends? And who will I sit with? So once they conquer those fears and they start getting more comfortable, they will start socializing with the kids at lunchtime, during passing periods. There will be more opportunities for projects to do in classes. And of course, we want them to be physical, so they will have physical education classes as well. So they need to grow and develop socially, emotionally, academically, and physically. And I think our middle schools do a good job, and you'll hear a little bit more about it. And I agree with Dr. Roush. It's kind of like when you dropped your kids off at kindergarten. And some of them just ran into the building and everything was fine, and then some of the moms had to practically peel the kids off of them, and they cried and cried and cried until about 10 minutes after mom left, and then all of a sudden the smiles start and they're okay. So this transition, as sometimes scary for kids, sometimes scary for parents, it will be okay. Our kids, your kids, adapt well to change, and I think there's a lot of supports in here and a lot of opportunities for that more structured kind of socialization time and physical activity.
Thank you, Mrs. Kripe. This next question, I think in the realm of elementary schools, it would be called specials. But in middle school and high school, secondary, we talk about extracurriculars and also specialized programming. So parents were wondering what PE, art, STEM, music, what kinds of offerings will there be, Dr. Roush?
You listed them all as electives, and again, until scheduling, occurs, we can't pinpoint exactly, what electives will be offered. However, those are definitely ones to consider along with our college and career as well courses.
And one of the things is, right, currently we're running a 6-period day, probably going to run a 7-period day at the middle school to give them more opportunities to get electives in, give them an opportunity to experience other areas so the kids can get engaged in the actual middle school experience for themselves.
And Dr. Huff, I've heard that we've started partnering with some new organizations to give our students the best support that we can through this transition process. Can you please speak more to that?
Certainly can. One of the things I'm very proud that Elkhart Community Schools will, probably about a month ago, entered in a partnership with something called Forward Next Generation Learning. If you have an opportunity to please look that up. They are very selective in with the school communities in which they partner with. We had a call today, and this year we'll use our planning time. They'll come meet with our stakeholders, our staff, our community, and help us with our strategic planning specifically for this move. If you've been following the state of Indiana and the diploma requirements, that does not start in high school. It impacts our 8th graders who are sitting in classrooms right now. But really, you need to back up even further and start looking at the interests of your 5th and your 6th graders. For Next Generation Learning, they will come along your school district to identify the areas where you can add those extracurriculars for your students. Make sure that you're providing real-world, problem-based learning opportunities for kids. And I think it's a good opportunity for us. I'll just share a little bit of anecdote. They worked with a school system in Indiana called Batesville School District. Batesville School District just recently became a 4-star school district, and it was because of the work largely that they did with Forward Next Generation Learning. They don't select to work with everyone, and so I was very proud that they thought, hey, Elkhart Community Schools, great potential to work with us. They helped us a little bit when we designed the schools of study in the high school a few years back, and we want to make sure that kids have opportunities to experience those things such as more STEM classes, project-based learning classes, become financial literate in the middle school settings. And some of you may say, well, that's growing up kids awfully fast. The kids are already telling us that they're ready for these things. Kids have an entrepreneurial mindset. And so it's going to be nice to see new and innovative electives. And I look forward to coming back to you in January after working with our teachers and working with our admin team on letting you know what some of those potential course offerings are for the middle schools at that time. So I'm very excited about that. And then we also will have some E&L opportunity as well. So I want to introduce you to our Director of E&L Services in our district, Cindy Bonner. And she will share some things also.
Good evening. Thank you for the introduction. English language programs, they shift just a little bit from elementary to middle school in a few key ways. First and foremost, there is a focus on academic language once we move into middle school. There's a greater emphasis on academic language skills. So what we aim to do is to prepare students for more complex texts as well as tasks. A huge one, too, is integration of content areas. So you've heard them talk about how they would integrate skills such as social studies and science. This is kind of a little bonus for EL students because what happens is for WIDA assessments and sometimes even for iLearn assessments and other state assessments, they cluster. So the clusters go from grades 3 to 5, and then the next cluster is 6 to 8. So this really, not to get too technical, but it becomes more integrated with subject-specific content. So this is really helping students learn language skills while engaging with those specific subjects such as science, math, and social studies. So that's really going to help them be better prepared for the increased rigor. And I know we talked about that as well. So EL students are really encouraged. They talked a lot about the projects that they do to be in more advanced discussions, tasks, and projects. So one of the things that we do to help that along at the middle school is to implement slightly different support structures for our EL students. So middle school often provides different support structures. We might be pushing in. You'll see more co-teaching happening at the middle school, which is also preparing them for the high school. But this helps to accommodate just our diverse learning needs.
And another student population that we've been very intentional about planning strategically through this process is also our high ability students. So I wanted to add that as well. I see on here.
I can speak to.
Yeah. Please, thank you.
Lisa Ernsberger is our Director of Professional Learning, and she's also our High Ability Coordinator as well. And currently, we only have select schools that offer the high ability, and so we're going to make sure that high ability is in all of our middle schools because, again, we are preparing our students to hopefully go into dual credit and AP courses as they move into high school. We currently offer some high school courses, and hopefully we can add a few more in 8th grade. And so honors courses also prepare students, and so there will be an emphasis on high ability in all of our middle schools. Sorry.
Thank you. And I see that we have financial literacy and AI courses. Dr. Huff, you briefly hit on the financial literacy, but who could tell me more about the AI courses? And is this going to be part of curriculum? Is this going to be extracurricular?
Well, we're currently working with a team to create an AI policy, so I definitely don't want to get too far ahead of them, but one of the things that we want to make sure is that there'll be a club next year where students will have an opportunity to, it's already happening. How many of your children are using AI? How many of you are using AI? How many of you think that you're AI? All right, so it's important that our kids have these skills early. If we are trying to make sure that we have rigorous environments for our kids, we can't act like that technology does not exist. It does exist, and it actually helps kids to be better learners if they're taught it in an appropriate way. And so this year we'll develop an AI policy, and they're currently working on that. They'll come to the board with a recommendation before the end of the school year, and then we'll work with teachers and our admin team on developing what potential clubs and then hopefully what courses could look like, not just at the middle school, but also at the high school as well. So I'm excited about that because I think that's being, in my opinion, underutilized here in Elkhart Community Schools, and it's already happening in Elkhart Community Schools. Having tongue twisters today, but I wanted to make sure that you know that that's happening, and so you'll be getting updates on that periodically. So I'm excited to make sure that our kids get, again, top quality programming, but also something that is relevant and real to them. And so I just am excited to share that tonight, and so that's a little bit about those AI courses. And the financial literacy, one, the kids just need to know how to deal with money better, let's just be real. But two, one of the things that the state of Indiana is really pushing at the middle school level is that kids start to get exposed pretty early to entrepreneurial courses, but also financial literacy. It is something that is a high school mandate now, but you see lots of districts around us are starting to teach kids about that in middle school. So project-based learning is an easy way to get kids to start to think about that entrepreneurial spirit and thinking about that, and Fort NGL is going to work with us on that piece to make sure that we have courses for that. But my goal is before every kid gets out of their middle school that they already have at least one financial literacy class as part of their schedule. So that's a little bit about those two things on there.
Thank you. All right, we're going to shift gears a little bit out of the education and curriculum. One of the most common questions that we received throughout this transition is, how will transportation be impacted? We've committed to ensuring that our transportation system is efficient and effective, and so I have a couple of questions for Mr. Giannisi. First of all, parents have asked, how far will their 6th grader have to walk by themselves?
So we are currently working on reduction of the walk zones. As most of you or all of you know, there are 2 miles for our middle schools and high schools, and we're working very hard internally and with our external consultant who provides our current routing software to reduce those as far as we can. And we hope that we can reduce that by at least half and provide more opportunities for our students to be bused. As Dr. Huff mentioned last night, transportation is certainly one of the challenges, one of the obstacles for getting our students to school and having them in class where we need them so that they can be educated the way we want them to be. So we are working internally on that right now, and as I said, we also have an outside vendor, which is our current routing software program, or routing program provider, that is doing a study of the efficiencies of our routes. So we are looking to reduce the number of routes we have by being more efficient, by placing more students on the buses, improving the routes, and by doing so, then we open up more space, more routes that we can create to reduce the walk zones.
Mr. G, that's going to ask, can I follow up? Absolutely. It's not just about putting more kids on buses. Yes. I'll put the microphone on. But it's sometimes how we ask things are very important. I want to make sure that, it's just not about putting more kids on buses. Like, that's not the most efficient way to solve the issue. It's also making sure that we are identifying the kids who correctly need those services as well. It's not very efficient to, hey, we're just going to route everybody, right? That's not a good way to make sure that we're doing things efficiently. This year, you probably are getting enrollment, probably been asked a lot to enroll your child this year. Who's got emails this year about enrollment from the district? Yes, I saw somebody with a white sweater back there. She definitely got some enrollment paperwork, and she knows why I said that. But the reason why that's important is that paperwork, as far as enrollment, it speaks to the software system. What we were doing was kind of inefficient when I came here. We just were routing every kid. Well, we found out every kid who dropped their kid off to school. A lot of our parents dropped their kids off to school. So we have buses running around that are just going into places that there's no kids. So our routes aren't very efficient now, but what they're working on now is identifying the kids who actually ride the bus and how do we streamline those routes. So one, we're getting more transportation opportunities, but also buses aren't going to places where we know kids aren't being picked up. Someone has shared with me that there's been a bus driving around their street for 4 years and their kid has not been picked up for at least 4 years. Why does that bus still show up there? To me, that's a sign of ineffective routing. We are training all our routers internally, utilizing this software to make sure that, one, we identify the kids who do need these services. Two, are our buses really at, I don't want to say capacity, but are you at efficiency? There are some buses that don't have but maybe 20 kids on them. Why? That's not enough. Each bus route costs $50,000 at a minimum to run. That's not enough to justify having a whole route. So what I'm saying is that we're looking at every single route for every kid who rides in our district. Currently, we have 6,000 kids who ride our buses, and we have 93 routes.
Yes, 93 routes.
For a district our size, that's way too many. We actually can be more efficient at that. You can actually provide more services by reducing the routes by making them more efficient. So I've tasked Mr. Giannessi and his team to what would it look like if we can route every child, what would it look like? And if we can't, how close can we get there? Walk zones will be reduced next year. So that's not a goal, that is a commitment of mine. So I'm probably saying a little bit more forceful than Mr. Giannessi, but that's what they're being tasked to this year. So I want to be really transparent about what we're doing with transportation, because I know out of all the questions that were asked, that was the number one topic, was transportation. How are you going to do it? I'll put the microphone down now. It's okay. She's my friend, so I'm asking.
All right, thank you. You both did such a wonderful job. You answered all my other questions in that one, so I don't need to ask anymore on transportation.
I have had access to the questions for a very long time.
I know. You're well polished. All right, so we will move on. Moving on to athletics, the transition opens up new opportunities for sixth graders to engage in sports at a more competitive level. And we're excited to offer a variety of athletic programs that will help students stay active and develop teamwork skills like Mrs. Kripe was talking about earlier. So Mr. Surge, will there be new competitive athletic opportunities for sixth grade students, and what are those?
Well, that's a good question. My name is Frank Surge. I'm the Director of Schools for the secondary level. There's one thing I know. We are going to create a vibrant sixth grade sports program for all our sixth graders. Now, with the conference currently, they can already participate in some sports, but that's not enough. We need to engage as many of our young kids as we possibly can in our athletic programs. And we will do that by reaching out to other schools, other middle schools, and there are a lot of middle schools that are 6, 7, and 8, and looking at, what kind of programs can we work together to create. The other thing, remember, we have an outstanding music program, and so we're going to have sixth grade band, orchestra, and our choral commitment as well. So, what we want is we want our kids to be engaged in our schools, in our middle schools. So we want them to be part of it. A very active and vibrant sports program, along with our music program, is a big part of that. Thank you.
Dr. Huff, did you have more to add?
Great answer, Mr. Surge. I appreciate that. If I can just add one thing to it. Currently, our middle school athletic director, last night we had Mr. Satterfield, who was over at Pierre Moran, speak a little bit about what they're working on behind the scenes to make sure that we have opportunity for our kids to play football and soccer, and I think wrestling was the other sport that he talked about.
Yeah, cross country.
Cross country
and cross
swimming.
country in a conference called the Big 11. There are currently 10 other schools that are already providing those with their sixth grade students. So for us, it'll be an easy way to make sure that we have a continuation for our sixth graders. So that's something that we're exploring now, just to make sure that we have the logistics and the paperwork, and so we make presentations to families so you know exactly what you're signing up your children for. So I think it's a huge opportunity. We don't want sixth graders to have less than experience because we decided to make that move for them. So we definitely want to make sure that they have an opportunity. So they're already contacting the other athletic directors in the other school districts, and I think that's going to most likely come to fruition. So, but I just wanted to let you know those are some things that are also happening behind the scenes that have to do with athletics.
Wonderful. All right, don't put your microphone down because this next one is you as well. So as we look ahead, we're also considering several other initiatives to further enhance Elkhart Community School experience. These initiatives will focus on creating the best environment for both the academic success and the personal growth of the students. Dr. Huff, can you speak to some of those future initiatives, please?
Certainly can. What we're talking about here today it's phase one, really. Phase one is getting the kids successfully from the elementary school, I'm talking about the sixth graders, into middle school. But it doesn't stop there. This, I believe, is your opportunity to see how we as a team, me as a superintendent, how we work when it comes towards making sure that we do transformation inside of our school district, because this won't be the last thing that we talk about. We are going to come back and look at to see, do we have optimal bell schedules? Does it work? I guess for the last few years, it got changed a few years ago. Is that the most efficient bell schedule that we have for kids? I don't know, but I think our committees will look at that. Next, we'll look at redistricting. When we move kids out of the elementary schools, there'll be leftover kids in the K through 5 schools. A logical question is, well, what's going to happen to those schools? I will promise you this year, I will not answer that question because I don't have all the information. We don't know what all the programming is going to look like. I don't know what all the enrollment is going to look like. But I do want to let you know we are planning for contingencies, because I want you to be able to, one, trust that we make sure that we're making evidence-based decisions and we're making those decisions with care. But also, lastly, we have to also continue to look at enrollment. I believe Elkhart is going to be a destination location for people. But at the same time, I have to deal with our current reality. Our current reality is that we have 10,580 students. We are projected at this time to have almost 11,500 students. We're at almost 1,000 less than what we should be. So what does that mean? Well, that means we have to start looking at facilities usage, and that when that occurs, my pledge is to be transparent with the community. I do not have any predetermined ideas on what schools are talking about. Some people ask me about school closing. That has not been my focus. My focus is making sure that this happens. But I need to be very honest with you. There are going to be conversations that we're going to have that are going to be a little bit tougher in probably a year or so. So, as always, my pledge when I came in here as part of running here is to be a very transparent superintendent to the community. That is something that I think that I'm going to need a lot of community support on, and need my administrative team to be aware, but also make sure that our staff, those are going to be things that are definitely on the table. And then redistricting. When you have schools that have different sizes, how do you make sure that you're optimizing those experiences of the kids at the elementary schools to make sure that they don't get a less than experience as well? So we're working clearly on the transition to middle school, but we're also working on all those other questions for phase 2. So there's a lot of work that's being done. There's a lot of work that's being asked of these people up on the stage. There's a lot of work for our teachers. There's a lot of things that people are thinking about. And I'm going to tell you today, I don't have all the answers, but I could tell you we're working on those things. And so when we come back and we continue to have these updates, you'll always have the information so you can make informed decisions. So those are my commitments from the superintendent's seat, even though I haven't sat down this whole event.
All right.
I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Well, that brings us to the end of the pre-submitted questions. Is there anything else that anybody can think of that you wanted to add before we wrap up?
I just want to say I'm proud of our parents and our staff for coming out this evening. We know that you have busy lives. We know that you are invested in your child's experience. Some of you have kids in both places, elementary school, no, all three, elementary school, middle school, and high school. This impacts you. Some of you said, yes, I do. I want to make sure that you definitely know that we're taking these things into strong consideration on how that experience, what that looks like, but also how it is done. My things, if you're going to do something, do it in an excellent manner, and I believe that my team has the same philosophy. So I just want to tell you thank you. And those pre-submitted questions, some of them were really challenging, and it really sat there and like, well, how are we going to do this? And so it allows us to make sure that we come prepared to answer you. And so don't stop asking questions. If you leave here, please make sure that you ask those questions. My job is to update the community, and I plan to do that at least on a monthly basis at the board meetings, but bi-weekly in newsletters regarding transitions, just updates from the district. So I just want to tell you thank you for your time tonight.
All right.
Typically no, but I will. I can come talk to you privately afterwards. Is that okay? Okay. Reason why I didn't do it last night, and I want to be consistent, and I didn't do it at the event from last night. But I will definitely speak to you afterwards. But that's all I have.
All right. Well, thank you. Before we wrap up, I want to remind everyone once again that if you didn't get a chance to submit a question earlier, like Dr. Huff said, please continue to submit them all throughout this process. You can either follow the QR code on the screen. We also have paper questionnaires at the back of the room. Fill those out, turn those in so that we can put those into an FAQ. Also, we have recorded tonight's forum, and so that will be posted to our website within 48 hours. So if you would like to go back and watch that. And then also, we have one more forum that is this Saturday. So you are welcome back, or if you have family or friends that would like to attend, please let them know. So thanks again for coming. Thank you for your interest in the students' transition, and keep asking the questions. Thank you.